I've got some apologies to provide. Colin Morrison, Duncan MacLeod, and Irene Gibson and Sharon Bissett. We've also had some notes that there's a couple of people going to be late. Councillor Linden's going to join us and Angela Scott will join us. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Can I just add, sorry, I'm new to this, but they didn't put their apology in just until recently. It's Robert Casty and Denise Casty, but she's going to join late as well. The Community Council, Thornwood Community Council, thank you.
Right, thanks. The minute of the previous meetings. Any matters arising? No. Okay, great. Item 4 is the chair of community board arrangements. There's been no shown interest in taking on the role on a rotational basis. So can we have a look at it again? The MD said anything, you, Matt? No?
No, we've had no nominations so far, Chair, but it's just we're welcome from any community organisation if anybody's interested in taking up the role of a chair, even on a couple of occasions, and we're happy to discuss that with them and take that forward.
Right, okay.
With the board cycles as well.
Right, if anybody's interested, just let Matt know. That's great. Next item is Guidance Service Community Champions, Alison Gordon.
Hi, thanks, Chair, and good evening, everybody. So, as you said, my name's Alison Gordon. I work as the head of Children, Families and Justice Social Work with the Council. I'm Chief Social Work Officer, and I'm also involved as Lead Officer for Community Justice and the Children's Services Partnership. So, I'm really pleased to be here tonight and to become involved for the first time in the board as the new community champion for Bellshill. If you're happy to indulge me for a few minutes, Chair, I'll maybe just say a little bit more about the role and how that's envisaged that will work going forward. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yep. So I suppose the aim of the role obviously is to contribute to strengthening the links between the Council's corporate management team and, as the sort of name says, and champion the voices of the communities in Bellshill. So you'll all have been on this journey longer than I have in terms of involvement with the board. So you know the Council and the North Lanarkshire Partnership have a real desire to put local communities at the heart of service delivery. And the new boards are obviously fundamental to that in terms of realising the ambitions of the Community Empowerment Act, but also delivering for communities in North Lanarkshire. So one of the prompts for forming the community champion role is really the recognition that there's real potential benefits in a much more direct relationship between the Council's corporate management team and the communities it serves through the boards. So that's really to ensure that the plan remains as relevant as, and our planning remains as relevant as possible to the needs of our communities. And it's also really to support the commitment of our communities team. So Matt and colleagues who you'll have been working with for a long period of time in relation to getting as far as we have to date with the progress of the community boards and the LOIPs. So I guess we also as a management team know that we've got some hard decisions ahead as we and partners move forward in the future, and we probably are having to deal with some of the more challenging legacies of the pandemic, including financial challenges as we move into recovery. So I think as we reach that point and are having to make some hard decisions and also look at how we need to change the way we deliver services, both for improvement and because of some of the constraints that we're likely to be working within. I think the view is it's much more better to be having these sorts of conversations and working collaboratively from the start. So this role clearly isn't unique to Bellshill Community Board. We've restructured the corporate management team within the council, and 9 heads of service have each been linked with a community board. You're lucky or unlucky enough to have me in relation to the community champion role, and that will become a fundamental part of our jobs, so written into our job descriptions, and we will remain linked with our boards for at least 3 years in the hope that we can get a good understanding really of the issues that are common across boards, and in my case specific to Bellshill. So we're still developing the detail of the role, and I'd really welcome views that anybody in the board has about that. We'll take an initial report to the partnership on the 2nd of July, and I'll share that with you when it's completed. Obviously one of the things that I can't be is I suppose the reporting link for absolutely all council business between the board and the community and the council, because you've already got well-established links and contacts for that within our systems. But I do hope that I'll be able to work with Matt and the communities teams and yourself to really look at how we deliver on the collectively on the key themes in your LOIP. But that's all I really wanted to say. I would be really happy to have further discussions with you collectively or individually, and take on board any comments or ideas you have about that. And if I can, to answer any questions you've got around that today. But delighted to be here and to join the board.
Thanks, Alison. Has anybody got any questions or comments for Alison? No, thanks very much, Alison. Next item is the flexible funding report. Matt.
Thanks, Chair. This report provides information relating to the flexible fund and tackling financial insecurity funding streams that have been allocated for local initiatives in North Lanarkshire. The funding is intended to support individual and communities impacted during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's just to ask the community board to note the funding arrangements that have been implemented and that are detailed within the report that was provided, and to note that further information will be made available to the community board as required. The report details the areas where additional funding has and will be made available in communities. That's all, Chair.
Thanks, Matt. Do we agree to note the report? Any questions for Matt? No, agree to note.
Chair, it's Councillor Burrows here. I've tried to put my name in the chat bar there.
Right, I've got it now. Aye. Right, Bob, on you go.
It's a question to Matt, Chair. See the flexible funding. My understanding, and I'll seek some clarity if I'm wrong, my understanding was that part of that was going to be given to Van L for distribution. Do we have any information about that distribution at all, Matt? Or is there any information coming out about where the money is going to? Thanks.
Matt.
Chair. There was some funding allocated that was distributed through Voluntary Action North Lanarkshire and the council. Councillor Burrows, we prepared an application process that went out and has recently been completed, and groups are now just at the moment hearing the outcome from that. At the moment, it was £300,000 allocated to local community groups through ourselves, and Van El were part of the process in relation to that. Is that the funding you're referring to?
Through you, Chair, yes, that's exactly the funding, because I think that the funding was increased to 300,000, and I would imagine that groups are now starting to get information, Matt, back to them. I just thought it might be appropriate if there was any information for anybody who here tonight to get an update on that. But you're saying there's not an update on that, is you?
No, so the groups who will probably find out this week the outcome from that. If not, yes, it's been this week. The groups will have been informed one way or the other regarding the outcome of that, the allocation of that funding, Councillor Burrows.
Thanks, Chair.
Jordan.
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify with Matt, so Matt, the flexible funding was a Scottish Government grant under £1 million, now under £2 million, and the Tackling and Security Fund was under 1.6 million, now doubled to 3.1 million for North Lanarkshire generally. How is it that we're going to try and get that to the most local level here in the Bellshill Community Board area? Notwithstanding what you've already said, is there an intention to have a further round of support beyond Councillor Burrows' question?
Matt.
The report gives information about the areas where the funding has been spent through financial insecurity, the summer programme were undertaken by our colleagues in CL&D and beyond. The £300,000 fund that was allocated to the groups, that has been fully expended, and there won't be any further rounds of funding for that. And that funding has been allocated to the groups.
You okay with that, Jordan?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Nora?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just wary of the fact that we do have quite a lot of new participants that have only either been in this one or maybe the one before that as well. So could I ask through the Chair if someone could give the new people a wee bit of an update as to how they can apply for funding, just so that everyone knows that when the next lot of funding becomes available, that there's a fair share throughout the community and it's not just the one group or two groups that are applying for it all the time? Thanks.
Okay, Matt?
Certainly, Chair. But we're discussing at the moment, Councillor, is relating to the flexible fund. That was sent out to everybody on our council's mailing lists, every group that we have on our mailing lists regarding funding applications, and also through Van L, and promoted through other community planning partners. So there was quite a lot of people in groups who were made aware of that funding. And that's what we do with the most, or all the funding streams that we become aware of. We'll make sure that that's shared widely with organisations to make them aware, whether it's the community grants or the grant award programme the council is responsible for, or if there's any other funding streams that comes through ourselves, this one through the Scottish Government. Once that come into us, the local groups are made aware of that, or given the timelines, given guidance notes, etc., for those who are interested in making applications. But we'll certainly continue to publicise as widely as we can any opportunities for funding. In terms of the local development programme, which we'll touch on a bit later, we are developing new approaches to get information fed back into us from local groups in relation to that as well. I can touch on that later on.
Thanks very much, Matt. It was well, yes, it's just that I know that not all groups were initially on the community board meetings to begin with, and I know that the council didn't have links for all the community groups that perhaps should have been invited from the start, but weren't aware of it. So it was more just that to find out when the next lot will open up, so that they can be aware that to look out for that. Is it every April or every January, just so that they know to keep an eye out for it?
Sure. In relation to the flexible fund, I'm not aware of any further rounds of funding in relation to that, Councillor Mooney. That's, as far as that's concerned, that is the end of that funding. If there's more funding comes out, we will certainly share that as widely as we possibly can. And I'd advise people of the timescales and timelines that are involved in that. We can certainly put out again to the community board and beyond the dates for the community grants and the grant award programme. We can certainly ensure that that's put out. We're actually in the middle of a cycle of that at the moment, but that we can certainly put out more information in relation to that to ensure that that's publicised as widely as possible. I can give a commitment to do that, no problem at all.
Okay, Nora. Hughie, you were wanting? Hughie, we can't hear you. Hughie, you want in?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thanks, whoever gave me that. Can you hear me right now, Chair?
We can hear you, Hugh.
I'm getting the fingers up with Matt. Chair, this is an awkward question to ask because I don't want to feel as if I'm mistrusting anyone, but I'm just listening to this flexible fund and it appears a lot of money and we don't seem to know where it's went to. So is it possible for the next board meeting we could maybe get a breakdown of where the money's actually went? Is that, or is that too big a, is it too widespread? Thanks, Chair.
Matt?
Well, we can certainly give information in relation to where the money went in relation to the summer funding, the poverty, the funding used in terms of tackling financial insecurity, and I say the £300,000 that went to the local groups. I don't know. We'd need to check in terms of giving information in relation to individual groups for that, but we can certainly check to see if that information can be shared publicly. If it can, there's absolutely no problem in advising which groups were successful in obtaining the funds.
Okay, Hughie.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for that, Matt.
Helen.
Hi, Matt. Through the chair, it's a question for Matt, please.
Okay.
Hi, Matt. Just wanted to check with you if that's okay, if I can update with you tomorrow, if you have all the groups in our area on your mailing list and what ones are existing on the mailing list. Would that be okay?
What we can certainly do, councillors, we can send out the list of the mailing lists we have for all the Bellshill area to all the councillors, and if any councillors get anything they want to add to that to ensure we're not missing anybody, then we can certainly do that, and we can add anybody onto that. We'll certainly make sure that that's sent out to all Bellshill councillors tomorrow.
Good. Right, that's excellent. Thank you, Matt. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in on this?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, can I say I'm unaware of any buttons you're meant to press on the screen here to get people's attention, because I'm a blind person, so the only way I can get to speak is if I interrupt you, so I'm sorry about that.
That's okay, Sam.
Somebody spoke about grants getting distributed through Van L. I must say, as far as I know, for the access panel, we've not been aware of any of these. Never been told about them.
Matt.
Which my concern is.
Well, I can certainly check to see who was sent the information in relation to that. But we did send information we had in all the council's mailing lists and through Van L. But I can double check to see if that particular group received any correspondence.
Okay.
Okay, Sam. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any questions? No. Agenda item 7. Community partnership update. Board development sessions, Matt.
Thanks again, Chair. Just wanted to highlight at this stage in terms of the importance of the board members and how critical they are to achieving the aspirations of taking forward the community board as effectively as possible. As we mentioned earlier at the previous board meetings about the board development sessions, we just wanted to move to the next stage of that. And as mentioned by Alison in her introduction, in relation to the role of the community champions, we want to work together in a positive way to make sure that the boards are as successful as possible, leading in their recovery on the plan for North Lanarkshire. We mentioned the last time at the board about a couple of areas that we wanted to cover in terms of the board development sessions. For example, community engagement, the role of the board member and the chair, the decision-making processes for the council and other organisations, the local development programme, community asset transfer, community safety, health strategies and partner strategies such as the police and Scottish Fire and Rescue. So what we need to do is to agree the initial areas for development. And these areas I've mentioned are just examples of that. And we want you to consider other areas that you want to be included in the board development sessions. At the moment, what we're doing through the council's talent and organisation section is to pull together a survey to be shared with all the community boards so that we can finally come to an agreement on what areas we want to make our principal levels of engagement in terms of the community board sessions going forward. So once we agree that, we identify the common themes and also identify the preferred methods of learning so we can ensure that we address the methods of learning that people are most comfortable with, whether that be online, interactive or paper-based approaches. So we're looking to get the survey out and we'd like somebody from the board, if they would be interested in being part of the developing of that survey, if that could be possible. We then monitor the feedback we get from that from across the boards, and from there we'll then plan the development sessions to be introduced formally later on this year, probably around the autumn. So that's the plan for the board development sessions, Chair, and just if anybody's interested in participating in that, then please let us know and we'll take that forward.
Thanks, Matt. Before I go any further, could you please make sure that your microphone is on mute if you're not speaking? Thanks. Any questions for Matt? or comments? Bob?
Chair, yeah, Chair, if you don't mind, I've got a question for Matt. Just maybe a comment rather than a question. I think this is, it's linked into what was previously said by Councillor Mooney, and it's important that any new members here tonight, it would be worthwhile if Matt could spend a minute or so just explaining how people can make application for something linked into the local development programme. I think, Matt, that would help a wee bit if you could give a minute of just to share that, how people get into the system. Thanks.
Okay, Matt?
Absolutely, Chair. The local development programme, this, if you want me, Chair, this is actually the next report. If you wanted me to lead into that at this stage in terms of the LDP, or just cover this question from Councillor Burrows at the moment?
Well, you could lead into the next report. I think that'd be okay, Bob.
I'm happy anyway, Matt. If it links
No
better
problem.
with the next report, I'm
problem
happy
at
to
all.
leave that.
I'm happy to cover your question, Councillor Burrows. We're really interested in the local development programme being very much community driven, and the vast majority of projects you'll see on the report you've got for the local development programme have came from local community groups or from elected members within the local communities. And then what's happened in the past is we've had expressions of interest that have came from local groups or as elected members, and from that we've developed project briefs to take that forward to design, to then look to move to consultation and implementation delivery as and when that's been possible, dependent on budget. What we have done now, and it'll be issued to all groups shortly, is we've developed a new, it's not an application forum as such, it's a forum that groups or individuals or elected members can put forward to show an expression of interest in relation to a particular project in an area, and ask for a wee bit more detail about the location, any information you might have about community support for a project, any idea of any costings that might have been got in previous people have made inquiries about the cost of a project, for example. So it's that kind of information that we're looking to pull together, and we'll issue that. So anybody who's got an interest in a particular project, we would send that forum out to the individual or to the group or to the elected member, and we'll provide support through our team to ensure that the correct information is put in there. It's not a particularly onerous application form or forum that we're asking people to complete. We're not looking for a huge amount of information in it, but it's just so that we can then have that information that allows us to start the ball rolling, get a project into the mix, potentially for delivery going forward. So that's really how we would do it, Councillor Burrows, at the moment. The report itself, in terms of, if that's okay, I can pick up any further queries to that. That's okay in relation to your point after I very briefly touch on the report itself that was issued last week with the papers. The local development programme for Bellshill for this financial year is sitting at around £220,000. On the holding list, or the list we've got in principal approval for, predominantly, it's sitting about £215,000. It's fairly evenly matched on that basis. And we've been allocated funding for this year and for the subsequent 4 financial years, and that's detailed within the report. So this report gives some updates on a couple of outstanding projects that have still to be completed in the area, but also gives information, as I say, for the next 5 financial years. So what we're looking to do now is to move forward on the projects that we have in principal approval for, and consider the best way to take these forward. Look at the feasibility of delivery in terms of the areas for where the projects are, carry out consultation on the projects locally with the groups who are with the local communities where these projects would be sited, and we'd look to prioritise these projects very much on the basis of wide community support, links to the outcome improvement plan, and whether they can be delivered within a reasonable budget. But also looking to support external funding as much as we can. Bellshill's got a number of really good examples of where LDP funding has led to external funding being obtained through third-party funding or match funding. So that's something we want to take forward. And also in terms of the budget, just to draw attention to the information in the budget that shows how the figure was arrived at. in terms of the percentage based on population and the percentage based on the SIMD figures, which is the Scottish Index for multiple deprivation, and the appendix shows where those figures are divided and come to the total for Bellshill for the next 5 years. So that's really in relation to the LDP, Chair, but I'm happy to take any further questions. I hope that's clarified the question from Councillor Burrows. If not, I can expand on that. That's fine. Hughie, you want to come in?
Yeah, is Councillor Burrows in front of me? Is that okay?
You happy with that? Oh, bye.
I've got a follow up, but I'll let Hughie go ahead. I'll follow him if you don't mind, Chair.
Okay, Chair. My question, Matt, is on the local development projects. And I noticed that the Community Empowerment Committee meeting on the 26th of May, I had a look at the projects for the Bellshill area, and they only totaled either 165 or 175,000. And I noticed that in the ones that you sent out for this meeting, they're now up to 225 or 235,000 pounds. So there's 50,000 pounds being added at the bottom for play areas. I'm just wondering how that got in there, because an individual surely just can't throw in 50,000 pounds. So could you explain to me, Matt, where that 50,000 was added?
Matt?
As you can see, it's in the report, Hugh, seeking approval. So that's something that's came after the Community Empowerment Committee. There's been some interest it's came into our team from local community groups who are interested in spending some money on local play areas that require some investment. Now, at this stage, there is no specific money allocated to any one project. It's just that we were asked to consider that to be considered at the board, whether they wanted to include that in potential further spend. It doesn't have to be spent on this year. It doesn't have to be spent at all. The board doesn't want to go down that road, but it's just something that was brought in, and it came in after the information that was portrayed to the Community Empowerment Committee, and will be reported back to the Community Empowerment Committee in due course.
That's fine, Chair. Matt, I don't know if this is the right time then to throw in a wee play group project or leave it to any other business. It's something that I had in mind anyway to add for a wee addition to a playground, but will I leave it to further down the agenda?
We're happy to take details of that just now, Chair, and we can add that on to the considerations for that.
Okay.
Right, thanks, Chair. Thanks. Matt, it's just hello. I live in Birkenshire. I live quite close to the Birkenshire Sports Barn, and I know that you spent a lot of money doing up the playfield and the Mugger Park. But there was a wee park next to it that was there for years for the kiddies. I'm talking about the 3 and 4 year olds, and they've got plenty of equipment, Matt. But in the weather, bad weather, you can't get into it because the ground isn't the same as the new one. And I can't describe what the new stuff you've got, but it's absolutely brilliant. You know, it's very safety and it's very clean, so you can walk in the middle of winter, you know. So I wonder if you'd have a wee look at that. I don't think it would cost a fortune, Matt, because the play area stuff is fine. All I'm talking about, Matt, is the actual ground that the swings and the wee shoots sit on. If you could maybe take a note, I'd be thanks for that. Thanks, Chair.
That's fine, Roger. We'll make sure that gets looked at. No problem at all.
Right, thanks, MD. Anything else?
Chair, it's Councillor Burrows here. Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Sorry, John.
Okay, Bob.
No, sorry, Bob, you were due to go next anyway, I believe.
My question to Matt, Chair, is that, see, when you look at the LDP programme, there's a number of items on there. What can happen is that sometimes for various reasons, they can be delayed or slip, right? Are you able to be flexible with stuff that actually can go in its place, Matt? Like you used to be able to do with what was called the local area partnership? Just for some clarity on that. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're more than happy to look at projects and consider others. But see, we have the budget for, you know, if every project went ahead here is based on this year's, then we wouldn't be able to deliver everything for this year. It's unlikely that every project will go ahead for one reason or another, whether following feasibility or consultation. So the likelihood is there will be other funds available. So in the Bellshill area, given the fact we have a 5-year plan for this, we're in a position where we could consider, you know, other project ideas that the local community may well have, and we're happy to take that on board. So people have got that just now. We can look at that, or say we can send out the application form that we mentioned earlier and have further discussions. But we're happy to do that and consider. Bearing in mind, as I said, we do have funding allocated for the next 5 years. It would be good to have a work plan in place in terms of delivering projects for the local community over at least the first couple of years to ensure the local community are involved in that process.
Thanks, Chair. That's helpful. Thank you.
Jordan, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's generally on the local development programme and the reporting. I mean, I've discussed this with Matt before. I've raised it at committee, and I think that we do need to take a look at it. And perhaps Alison can reflect on my comments and take it back to corporate management team for reporting right across the board. I do think we need to strengthen how we're reporting on local development programme, particularly when we are marking a number of ideas or projects that are seeking potential approval or have just been floated. When members get our local fund, our community grants, we see a wee bit more detail even in the community grants than we do when we're getting the local development programme report. I mean, we see the organisation that's applying for the resource, the value of the resource, a brief outline of what the resource is going to be used for, and whereabouts it's going to be situated. When it comes to the local development programme, unless members ask specific questions to dig into the detail, that information isn't necessarily forthcoming. Now, you know, I mean, individual members can bring forward suggestions, community groups can bring forward suggestions, but unless you're eagle-eyed, and pay tribute to Mr. Breen, he's always very eagle-eyed on these things. You know, unless you are eagle-eyed and you know looking at what's coming on and what's coming off the programme, you know, it can slip the mind. So I think that we do need to look at how we report on the local development programme and strengthen that, so that we can have a kind of trail of, oh, right, that was that group that had suggested that. If it's a multi-agency or a multi-group, then that's fine, that can be noted. I do think it'll strengthen our oversight of the local development programme as we move forward in terms of our decision making, not only for local elected members, but even to the board who may be less au fait with a number of the local community groups that are operating. It certainly enhances the kind of democratic scrutiny of those decisions.
Okay, Chair, we can look at that, Matt.
Sure, absolutely. Picking up the point Councillor Linden made, the forum we spoke about earlier on there, Councillor Linden, contains a lot of that information that you're referring to about where the idea is coming from, the area that they're looking to do a project in, the type of project it is, any consultations that might have taken place or could take place in relation to that. That's something that's going to be allocated to every single project. And retrospectively, the projects that are mentioned in there just now, we actually just had a meeting again this morning about this. Retrospectively, the projects that are in there, the projects that require that kind of information, that will be provided for those projects. So, and that will be made available to anybody who wants to see that going forward. So we're more than happy to produce that. And say we'll have that ready over the next few weeks for all these projects going forward.
Okay, Jordan.
That's a great development, Chair. Thanks.
Any other points or questions? You want in again?
No, Chair, sorry. Maybe I haven't lowered my hand. Sorry, Chair. No, I'm finished. Thanks.
Right. Any other points or questions? No. The next item, local outcome improvement. Christine.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I want to thank everybody who has been involved in the whole process of the kind of LOIC development up to now. There's been a variety of people on this call tonight who have been involved in various ways in the LOIC development process. I wanted, just because we've got some new people on tonight as well, I thought it would be worthwhile going back and recapping on what that process has been, just briefly. Phase 1 of the process involved kind of mapping council services and partners' priorities. Phase 2 and 3, which was round about the end of last year, there were stakeholder engagement, listening events, kind of wider community surveys. There was kind of engagement with seldom heard voices as well. Phase 4, which is the one that we've just come through recently, involved us kind of carrying out, and when I say us, the kind of wider group of people, pulling together a kind of triangulation, we called it, but that means just pulling together all of the information that came through the engagement and the consultation processes with local communities and local people, and looked at what kind of evidence, what was that telling us in terms of the kind of priorities that were emerging through the discussions. And what we then did was we had a kind of special board meeting where we presented that to people who were able to kind of come along to that meeting. And it was agreed at the meeting that we would look at developing some subgroups to start looking at kind of identifying key actions that could help to address the priorities that were identified and agreed at the previous board meeting. What I did then was I circulated the draft actions that were put together by a variety of the people on this call and to the board. And then we had another special board meeting around about the 10th of May, I think it was. And at that board meeting, it was agreed with some small amendments, because obviously it was a working document, that the actions that were identified by the subgroups would be able to address the priorities that had been identified. So really, what I'm asking tonight of the board is that to obviously finally formally endorse the action plans that have been agreed by people round about the board who have been involved in that process at the two special board meetings, and kind of endorse the work that's taken place up to now, so that we can move to the next stage. The next stage will be about pulling that together in a report with all the agreed actions, and then we start the process of taking this forward. So we need the board to officially and formally endorse the process and the actions that have been identified. So that's what I'm asking tonight, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Anybody any questions or comments for Christine? Do you agree to endorse the action plan? Okay, that's great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chair.
Next one is the board subgroups.
Chair, that'll be myself as well. I think it's following on from the kind of discussion that I had there in terms of taking forward the actions that have been identified to address the priorities. And obviously we need to look at that. Part of the discussions that took place when we looked at community safety, we identified that we previously had a community safety subgroup. And one of the actions there was that we reinstate that community safety subgroup. So certainly that would then be seen as a subgroup of the board. But it was also looking at how we could take forward the other actions. And part of the discussion was around the kind of locality partnership, taking some of these actions forward. So we still need to kind of look at that in terms of the LOIP, but also there's an opportunity for other subgroups to be developed depending on local community need. You know, if there's things that local people, board members are seeing that it would be useful to have kind of subgroups, we're still happy to look at those. But it kind of makes sense, like I said before, that the subgroups are linked to the LOIPs and we kind of take things forward in that process. So that will be the next stage. We will start to look at those subgroups, and even if you've not been involved up to now, there is an opportunity moving forward to be involved in these and helping to take forward the actions that have been identified. That's all I wanted to say, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. Anybody any questions or comments for Christine?
Can I make a comment, please?
Certainly.
Christine, last meeting I attended here, we talked about NL Digital, and there is no more come back to me. I was asked if I would take part in the NL Digital subgroup because of my chairmanship of the Access Panel, but never heard of CHEAP.
Chair, can I maybe answer that one? Sam, just I think it was yesterday or the other day, we've just received information coming out about the setting up of those subgroups. So I'll make sure that your name's included within that. But certainly it's not been progressed yet, but the plan is that that will be progressed pretty shortly.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Anything for Christine? No, thanks very much, Christine. Item 8.
Thanks, Chair.
Item 8, petitions. There's no petitions been put forward so far. So move on. Item 9, input from local community groups. Ward Councillor Johnson, John McLeish. John?
Councillor, can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Sorry, I'm having connection problems. I'm terrified I'll drop out here. Yeah, I just wanted to raise a point. Obviously, I raised this almost as a single issue through the Parent Council at Cardinal Newman. Got a few points I want to make. I kind of want to rush through them. I'm going to, just in case this becomes an issue for my connection, really my final points on this is that I'm looking for elected members to comment on what I've got to say and provide any assistance or help to bring this to a kind of fruition, if you like, and what elected members of local authority involved in this responsibilities they take about this whilst this delay happens. So to bring everybody up to date with it, obviously there's been an agreed road safety issue on or around the Bellshill junction. Agreed cross parties, I understand it, and the local authority, and we are essentially at the point where the risks of personal injury continue there. Anybody knows who's tried to cross that knows it's a high risk strategy to try to walk across that. It's always a kind of jog. In its current state, it's, in my opinion, utterly unfit for the purposes of the pedestrian, who are obviously the last stakeholder that we continued in the list of priorities. For that, our school children have got a requirement to use that to get to school from the Pew Park and Fallside areas. And so in doing so, they're kind of putting their personal safety at risk. It came to the fore, obviously, with the recent information about the buses, etc. And obviously that's now not in place. But really the point of me being on here is to bring to everybody's attention that the continued delays relating to this are still ongoing. I was chairperson of the Cardinal Newman Parent Voice 3 years ago. I came to the LAP board at that point 3 years ago to try and get something done here, and we're still not actually. We've made some progress. The last update I had on the 8th of March was that the project was being put before the committee relative to capital projects. I'd hoped at that point that something was going to happen in August 2021, but the last update in advance of this meeting I got that there was no update, apart from the fact that L8's capital programme has been finalised. Not being somebody in a council environment and understanding that, I'm not really too sure what that means and how timescales involved in that, but obviously the point I want to make is we as a parent council have assumed our responsibility in identifying this issue, pushing it forward for 3 years, getting the necessary reports, bringing it to the platform that I understood it needs to be brought to. And if a child is hurt or killed in that area, we need to look at ourselves and our actions to date and question if we did everything we could. And I feel like we have taken that on as a parent council, as a community group, and as somebody invested in road safety. I find it difficult to understand how that 5 or 6 years after Councillor Lyle, the SNP party, kind of took that on as an elected part of it, and Councillor Burrows has been really helpful in the meantime, trying to direct us through this, but there's still not a single physical change on that junction, having identified it as a problem. I realise it's not necessarily at the community group level, it's got all kinds of conflicts and strategies and cross-party and local authority and Scottish Government parts, but I still think, I just feel like we're the lone voice in trying to push this forward, and I don't know what other support anybody else can give on here. And going back to my questions, what can be done to help us progress this, and will the elected members of local authority involved in this take their share of responsibility? And we pray obviously it never happens. If something serious does happen to a person, particularly in our case, a school pupil, on that junction while we're waiting for something to happen that appears to be agreed but we can't get any movement on. And I just invite any comments for any councillors on that to help us about with that. And I appreciate, I'm frustrated, I'm impatient, and I'm worried about it, and I'm just hoping that people in here will be able to point me in the right direction as to how we can get this moving.
Thanks, John. Bob, you want to come in?
Sorry, Chair, I was on mute there listening to John. John says he's frustrated, and I'm fully understand about why he's frustrated. I need to say I'm frustrated with it as a councillor, and I know, and John will know the input that I've had on it, and I know recently the input that Councillor Mooney had on it. And to a degree, after years, we did manage to get Transport Scotland and North Lanarkshire Council together on site, and we're now moving in the right direction. But I need to say, the right direction should have been done by now. Bellshill roundabout is not a nice place to be. We all know that for those that pass on it, either walking or driving. I've been given assurances that there is the money there in the capital programme for it, but what we can't get right now is a date of it starting. Now, I do get that there's a lot of projects to get done, and there's a pecking order and there's a waiting list. We all know that, but this hasn't just been a new programme that we've put together. And I think where we should move with this tonight is that from the Bellshill Community Board, we should be making representation at the highest level to get this moving forward in the right direction. If it means it's got to go up the programme, the planning programme, the ideal time, obviously, to do something like this is during the summer holidays. But from what I'm picking up, from what John's saying as well, is that that's not likely to happen. So the frustration's there. But hopefully, if we can get this Bellshill Community Board to actually put a comment in to move it forward collectively, then that's fine. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Bob. I totally agree with you. I think we should be able to do something about that. Nora, do you want to come in?
Yeah, please. Thank you, Chair. You know, I was a former pupil of Cardinal Newman as well, but fortunately the most tempting place to go and get something to eat when I was there was Pacity's Chip Shop. You know, we didn't have McDonald's or Subway back then. But, you know, I do feel really passionate about this. When I was 8 years old, and Councillor Burrows will tell you this, I was knocked down and nearly killed, and I don't say that lightly. I've still got issues with the injuries that I was left with back then. I broke everything, and I mean everything, down my left-hand side. Fractured my pelvis in several places, had a cast on from the tip of my toes right up to the top of my thighs. And like I said, I've still suffering 40 years on from the after effects of that, and I would want no child or parent to go through what my family went through back then. A long time I was in hospital. So yeah, I do feel really passionate about this, and my kids go to Cardinal Newman now, one in 5th year, one in 3rd and one in 1st year, and we do need to get this sorted. So rest assured that we're not sitting on our laurels over this. It should have been done by now. I know that COVID has played a part in its delay, but I would not beg's probably the wrong word to use, but I would plead with any of you who want to drop us an email to support that, to push the council on a bit, then that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. Jordan?
Thanks, Chair. A couple of things from me. I mean, one, I totally understand the frustration of Mr. McLeish. The delays have been unacceptable. And I say that in the part of Transport Scotland as well. You know, people dragging their heels around who's responsible for the particular bit of the roundabout, etc. That's not what it's about. It's about all of us working together to try and get a solution on this. And I just want to say that, you know, all elected members cross-party share the same concerns, and all elected members, regardless of the ward, you know, whether it's yourselves in Ward 16 or me and Angela and Harry and Colin in Ward 15, or yourselves in Ward 14, you know, not one of us are unaware of the daily risks that, and Angela rightly says, not just our young people take, but actually older population as well, you know, running the gambit at that roundabout. Wasn't quite as long ago that I was a pupil. I'm not going to say 40 years, Nora. That's I know my bread's buttered. I was it was only 7 years ago that I was a pupil, and saw many a horror story. None of it reported, obviously, because there was no severe injury, but it was close enough. So there is something for us to do. Two practical things, I think, in addition to all the work that's ongoing in the background. I mean, Alison, I feel like you're getting made hay, and you know there's a reason why you're called the community champion now for the community board. But you know, you do sit on the corporate management team of the council with every other service, and all the services who need to be involved in this project. You know, whether it's roads, whether it's environment. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, there's a thanks noted in the chat bar for those who are listening at home. You know, so the point I'd make is that, as that new role, this is one of those things that affects all wards within this community board, and therefore it is something that, you know, in terms of applying operational assistance and operational pressure, it does seem like an obvious candidate for that. And then secondly, Chair, I do think I think the time has come and gone for you know, Mr. McLeish to continue to have to force this onto our agenda. He brings it up every time. Perhaps it should be an item on our agenda until it becomes resolved at the community board to have an update on the progress that's been made in the project, so that it's at the forefront of all of our minds, given that it does cross all of the wards in the Bellshill community area. So that would be my request, that elected members work in partnership with Alison as the new community champion, both strategically and operationally, and that it becomes an agenda item for this community board as an area of interest for all of us. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm sure we can accommodate that. Angela?
I'd just like to echo what my colleagues have said. I have experience of my elderly mother about 8 years ago walking to the cemetery, falling because she had to run. Someone came speeding round the roundabout, and that's how I know about the elderly and how much they have experienced with it. But there have been delays with Transport Scotland, we accept that. There have been delays with COVID, but this has been well known by the group that this was something that was coming up. So along with Jordan, can request that Alison would support us and work alongside all elected representatives to ensure something is now done regarding this roundabout. Because when I lived in Gilmer Place, there were a number of young people knocked down from Cardinal Newman on that roundabout. Nothing serious, but there were incidents. So nothing as serious has happened to Nora, fortunately. But just can we all work together to get this done?
Thanks, Angela. Frank, you want to come in?
No, thanks, Jim. I mean, it's like a Cardinal Newman reunion tonight. I mean, I wasn't there 40 years ago, but I certainly wasn't there 7 years ago. But I would just say, I mean, I share everything that's been said, and I don't, you know, when I put my comment in the chat bar, you know, there are a few things that have now been covered, but I do think that there is a role for this board. You know, I think Alison does perhaps have a role to play here. I do think, though, Chair, perhaps through yourself, corresponding directly with Robert Steenson, who's the chair of the Strategic Capital Working Group, to get a steer on this, because John has been coming here for years on this issue, and it is, for whatever, well, we all know the reasons why it's gone on and on and on. There have been challenges, we accept that. There have been various incarnations of what could be done, which again has been a challenge. But we seem to be almost at the finish line now, and we need to get over the finish line as quickly as is physically possible. So I do think, Chair, perhaps from yourself, Alison, I know do her bit behind the scenes as well. But I think formally the board needs to communicate this directly to the local authority. I do think Robert Steenson is the best person to do that in his capacity as chair of the Strategic Capital Working Group.
Thanks, Frank. Certainly I agree with everything that's been said tonight. I never went to Cardinal Newman, but I'm aware of it. My son did. I'm sure we can take that forward. We can. I can correspond with Robert Steenson about it, and I'm sure Alison will raise it at the group she's put in the chat bar. She's happy to discuss and take it forward with colleagues. So that's great. Helen?
You're on mute, Ellen.
Not a great deal input, just to concur wholly with what Frank has said there. I mean, obviously, throughout the course of what the various comments, we have established without a doubt the absolute need for this to be completed. And as my understanding, it is in the absolute final lap here. And of course, the only person that really can see this driven over the finishing line is indeed Robert Steenson. It was my opinion, it was my understanding, even during just the course of my election, that it was expected to be finished late summer, early autumn. So obviously, as I say, this needs a final push, and it needs to be the senior officers that do that. Thank you, that's all.
Thanks, Helen. Anybody else want to come in on that? Right, I'm sure everybody will play their part, and we'll all take it forward and try and get this done as soon as possible. And we'll go from there. Thanks very much. Thanks, John, for bringing it up again. Next item is...
I appreciate it. genuinely appreciate all your support, all of your support in trying to do this. I do feel, just to echo what you've already said, I don't think there's much else that I can.
You're breaking up, John. Thanks, John. We'll certainly take this forward. The next item is Bellshill Community Garden, Bellshill Community Council. Who's taking that?
Yeah, that's me, Jim. So I'm Angela, I'm chair of the Bellshill Community Council. So we have had a kind of public consultation, if you like, through our social media pages, Facebook page. We've been speaking to a lot of local residents, and there's been a common theme highlighted, and of course that's the problem with litter and dog fouling in the area. We have managed to set up a planning group within the community council to look at these issues. We have got a litter picking programme. So we've got some dates in the diary to start tackling areas of concern to local people. We've been working with local schools and nurseries. We've been working with North Lanarkshire Council's Tidy Up programme, and thankfully they provided us with the litter picking equipment, bin bags and gloves and things. Obviously due to the restrictions, we've been quite limited to what we can do, so there's been a lot of planning going on in the background, so hopefully now we can actually start getting out there and making a difference to the local area. Other issues which kind of tugged at the heartstrings is people actually emailing us and stopping us in the street and just asking, is there anything that we can do as a community council to highlight the folk that have lost loved ones during the last year, people that haven't been able to grieve properly, attend funerals for friends and family, people that have just the whole grieving process, the bereavement, social isolation and loneliness. And I'm a member of the LOIP subgroup, the COVID impact group, and we've certainly touched on this a lot. It's came up over several of the subgroups, looking at mental health issues. So one of the things that we came up with as a community council is a memorial garden. We don't want to call it a COVID memorial garden because a lot of people have died during the last year and a bit, not from COVID, but families still haven't had the opportunity to grieve properly. So we thought either a memorial garden or just even a community garden where people can go and just sit and reflect on the last year. So we have been in contact with a local resident who's actually part of a group within the care homes. It's a national group and it's loved ones of care home residents that's lost during the last year. So this person has asked if I could bring it up tonight about the opportunity to work together to have a community garden within the local area. We've also been in touch with Green Space Scotland, so there is other areas within Scotland that are looking at memorial gardens. We've been speaking to Keep Scotland Beautiful and also Living Streets. We've been in touch with the local primary schools, and Hattonley Care Home as well are really keen to work with us. Obviously they've had a lot of residents that have died in the last year. We've been looking to work with restorative justice as well. So yeah, it's going to be a huge project for us to take on. So we will be looking for some help from through partnership working, and certainly it's going to be quite a multiple agency project. So yeah, we're also looking for any green space that's available. So yeah, it's going to be a huge project, and we would take on any recommendations, any help from anybody on the group tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, thanks, Angela. Well, I'm sure we'll give you as much help as we can. Get Matt the details. I'm sure you'll bring it onto the agenda. Matt, would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. I'm more than happy to work with the Community Council on that through the team to develop the ideas and to try and take that forward. Maybe something again is maybe potential support through the local development programme and other funding streams. So we're happy to look at that.
That'd be great. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to say on this? Bob?
Just to say that on the litter picking, I think it's my understanding that North Lanarkshire Council would be delighted to assist the community with the litter picking. And we know that there was some additional funding put by the budget in February for that. I'm also aware that in Thornwood Community Council have done a lot of excellent work, like Bellshill Community Council, and they've got a lot more planned as well. And all I want to say, it's great that the community and the council can come together and work in partnership, and it's a well done to everybody. That's what it's all about, working together. So well done. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Bob. I agree wholeheartedly with you. It's good to see things like this happening. Anybody else? No. The next, Jordan, you were wanting to come in with something?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for indulging me in terms of the agenda. Just I felt like this was an appropriate time to bring it up. Real concern at the moment that members will be aware of about Cardinal Newman High School and the extensive vandalism that's occurring at the site at the moment. I know Councillor McNally's certainly aware of it as an education committee, something we're all concerned about. And I just want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank policing colleagues for proactive messaging on social media and SFRS for response work. It's sad that it's been required, but they've been absolutely fantastic. The issues there is, extensive damage being caused to the building and willful fire raising, which is, a real worry. And I've had anonymous contact from both staff at the school and residents nearby with genuine concerns about the escalation of behaviour. There was incidents and now it just seems to be getting worse. Obviously concerned about the damage to the school itself. There is an associated impact in terms of cleaning, janitorial staff, cleaning staff having to go in and clean up the remnants of what's been left behind after the damage is done. The evening shift, who are cleaning and doing janitorial work, are receiving profanity and being, getting a hard time on their departure from work. Ultimately our employees receiving a difficult time just for going about their job. There was the incident with the fire, which caught, spread and caught into the conifers at the nearby resident, and required an appliance to attend and put it out. And that is a real concern. It's a concern, and I bring it up at the board level because it's a concern for all of us elected members in all three wards. Cardinal Newman is obviously at the heart of our community, just discussed that. And therefore I'm bringing it up to see what more we can do collectively. We obviously have the very direct response work that's happening from Fire and Rescue Service and Police Scotland, but perhaps we need to look at a kind of more multi-agency response, considering why our young people are engaging in that behaviour in the first place. So I'm thinking, have we considered diversionary youth work? Do we have a kind of policing response, not necessarily when things are going bad, but just to engage with young people on site, and any other interventions that we could possibly put in place to avoid something really bad happening at that location. It only takes for a fire to catch, and the impact is devastating. And I do think it's important that we raise it. And I know that our colleagues, both police and fire and other departments, are on the call. And I know that people listening at home will be keen to hear it raised. So thanks for the opportunity, Chair, and let's see what we can do to fix this.
Thanks for raising that, Jordan. Is there anybody else want to come in?
Chair, if I can come in, it's Craig Campbell from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I'm the station commander and part of the North Lanarkshire Area Management Team, responsible for Bellshill and Steps fire stations. So I can address the direct point that the councillor makes about the school itself. Our community safety team are doing a bit of work with the schools, not only Cardinal Newman but Bellshill Academy as well. We've now been given the go-ahead following COVID restrictions to make our way into the schools and start some engagement work. So not only the response element of it, which we're obviously always going to be there to provide, we're actually going to be going in there and we're doing some proactive engagement work with the children, with the permission of the schools, obviously COVID permitting, COVID controls and restrictions allowing, then that's something that we'll be certainly taking up over the next few months. It's not something that's peculiar to Bellshill, and if you've seen the report I submitted with the agenda items and with attachments, it's a problem for all of North Lanarkshire, and it's something that we as an area management team are looking to address through various activities. It's certainly not lost on us, and it's something that we'll be tackling head on over the next couple of months. Thank you.
Chair, if you wouldn't mind, I could like to just come in there as well, please.
Sure,
I say
no
you've
problem.
kind of stolen my thunder a wee bit, councillor, because it was certainly part of what I was going to update policing-wise on, which the main issues we are seeing just now are the low-level kind of issues, the antisocial behaviour, disorder, vandalism's all kind of creeping up. So, and yeah, certainly in the last 2 weeks in particular, Cardinal Newman has been subject to various kind of attacks of vandalism. We've got quite a few things on the go there just now, where I had some discussions last week with the headmaster himself. There are kind of security measures and things they are looking to implement, because part of the problem was the grounds weren't being secured at all. I think partly it's shared with social work, who worked a lot later. There's CCTV things there that are looking to kind of improve on as well. Part of the problem with Cardinal Newman is potentially the skate park. And it's not that I'm trying to suggest it's any of the kind of skaters, but generally because people go there to that area, it then draws in other people who are not necessarily interested in the skate, then get a wee bit bored and start looking at what's round about them. We had similar issues in the last month or so at Sacred Heart Primary School as well, and it was young kids, and we are looking at young kids here around about 13, 14 are doing this. They were up on the roof, damaged solar panels there, and yeah, there's kind of quite a lot of vandalism now to Cardinal Newman. At the moment, we don't have enough to charge anybody, but there have been potential people kind of named. So the campus officers for the school, along with school, are visiting them, speaking to them in front of their parents, making them aware of the kind of potential allegations there as well, and an attempt to curb it. To tackle it for the last couple of weeks and going forward, the shifts, the officers in the areas have all been asked to give it extra attention where they can do. It's on their kind of patrol plans, particularly at the weekend. And again, the campus officers are kind of taking this kind of quite personally as well, because they have a pride in their schools. So next week they're changing their shifts to work later on to again target the school, target the problems, and see if they can obviously put an end to it.
Thanks for that, Graham. Frank, you want to come in?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. I mean, I think I really welcome what Graham and Craig have said there, because it has been an escalating issue, and it's, you know, even just last, I think Tuesday, there were windows smashed, and you know, so it's something that's just not going away at the minute. But hopefully, with the action plans that you know have been outlined there, we can start to see some progress. Certainly, you know, there are some issues around CCTV in particular, you know, that I think do need to be addressed. So that's something that I'm sure other elected members along with myself have been communicating directly to council officials. But you know, I mean, I think that there is a challenge with the fact we're coming towards the end of the term. We're going to have, you know, there's going to be fewer people in and around the school, you know, and we don't want a free for all effectively. So over the summer months. So I mean, I welcome what's been said by the fire service and police Scotland, their chair, and hopefully we can sort of come together to try and address some of these problems.
Thanks, Frank. Elizabeth, you want to come in?
Yes, hi. I'm on my mobile, my laptop's went the blink. I'm just a member of the Thornwood Community Council, and I would just like to just say that we've been doing the litter picking programme as well. We do it every second Saturday, and thanks to all the councillors that have took part as well, the local councillors, Nora and Angela. And there's lots of other local community people in the area take part. Also, we ourselves have we've acquired a piece of land that we are going to make into a wee garden, just a seating area where people could enjoy the sunshine, and a couple of benches with some plants and stuff like that. But the thing I wanted to speak about was for the last, quite a few months now, Thornwood Community Council have been trying to organise, we've been really working hard organising it's a knockout fun day for the community. It was a COVID, it was just to get us back up and running and make people give them a wee bit of happiness. And North Lanarkshire Council, and I'm surprised that nobody's mentioned it, that has announced that no open
Elizabeth,
events.
Elizabeth, can I stop you there? Can we leave that to any other business?
Yes. Leave
Okay.
that, no bother at all. So it was just to say that the Thornawood Community Council, we've also been working with the View Park Gardens, helping out, getting up and running, cleaning everything, sweeping, and with the help of the men's shed as well. They're making our benches. So that's all I wanted to say.
Right.
I didn't have anything prepared, I just done it rushed because I thought the chairperson was coming on, but sorry.
Right. Anne-Marie, you want to come on?
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to the issues at Carol Newman and suppose Bellshill wide in terms of vandalism, etc. We've had our own issues at our childcare premises in Orbiston. It was just to sort of say that we are contracted by North Lanarkshire to do the sort of diversionary youth work that Jordan was mentioning in terms of +1 programme and early intervention. And we've also, so that's kind of for the older kids, and we've also got a new programme coming up called Why Risk It, which is helping with issues with the younger kids, because we felt that was a real issue in the community, that it wasn't just people assuming it was older kids. We've got 8 and 9-year-olds, probably younger, vandalising their own premises, so we know that there's an issue. I would say Why Risk It's getting it's rolled out this week and starts in a couple of weeks. We haven't had any referrals for any of that, and we will take referrals from anywhere, whether it's police, fire, schools, anywhere. The EI and +1 are both very similar projects. EI is a 4-week programme, but +1 sort of takes that a bit further if we need to. Again, we generally take referrals from social work, but we will take referrals from any agency. Not sure about if there's a waiting list for either of those at the moment, but I do know we are still taking EI referrals. So just to let you guys know, if there's anyone who thinks that we've got a kid that they think would benefit from that, just to let us know and get in touch.
Okay, thanks, Anne-Marie. Jordan.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks to all colleagues. Apologies to Graham for stealing his thunder. It's a rare thing. I never do that often. Just to say, it's interesting, just picking up on Paul Finn's point in the bar about not excusing the behaviour, but as a result of boredom, and I think that was kind of what I was hinting at in terms of the diversionary youth work approach, because what we don't want to do where possible is that kind of criminalisation of young people. It's very much the opposite of the approach that's being taken by Police Scotland, clearly, as you can hear from that contribution. Chair, just for me, I do think it is an issue we should keep our eyes on, and I was picking up on, I think what Frank was saying in terms of the difficulties with the summer holidays coming up and the kind of lack of opportunity to engage directly with our young people during that period. So I'm wondering if Christine and Matt could take back from ourselves, or certainly from me, to perhaps Liz Ferguson, June Ford's team, to ask if there's a piece of work that we can do over the summer period supporting our colleagues in Police Scotland, Fire and Rescue, and any other agency for some direct engagement. I know that we tried recently a similar idea down at the Hatton Rig at the Brandon Park, and they made a point of going out kind of routinely over a few days at a certain time. Perhaps there's a similar initiative that can be done there. They might be able to engage with people who are at the skate park, but also deter some of that behaviour that we're seeing. So if we can take that back, that would be appreciated, certainly from myself, and I'm sure the board generally would be happy if we saw a multi-agency response to it. And I think, again, thanks to the partners, as if they're not busy enough, both police and fire dealing with these things. So thanks again to both of them, and if you can take that back to their teams as well, it's appreciated.
Thanks, Jordan.
Chair, happy to raise that with Liz Fergus's team. Thanks.
Okay, Matt, you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Just to pick up on Councillor London's point there, I'd emailed Christine 5 minutes ago, just on that very point, to pick that up exactly with June Ford's team to try and to see what action we can take in that area. And Christine's just confirmed we've done that already, so we'll make sure that's picked up on. The other point in terms of the police and fire and other partners, the communities team are happy to support any of what you're undertaking there, and to ensure that the multi-agency approach is taken on board. Particularly, Councillor McNally mentioned the CCTV as well. It's something we're happy to look at and link in to see if there's any benefits of additionality in that area. So we can certainly look at that as a comprehensive approach to addressing those issues. So happy to have a chat off table regarding that.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Anybody else want to come in on this issue? No, I think we've covered a lot. I think hopefully a lot will get done, and with the outreach might be working. So thanks very much, everybody, for their comments. The next is the input. It's the police. Graham.
Hi, Chair. Thanks very much. I say we've kind of started to kind of cover it. For us, what I'm seeing certainly kind of across at the boards, the three kind of different ward areas in Bellshill is, as we said, the low level stuff. It's the disorder, the kind of younger kind of children, the abuse, the vandalisms. And I do think it kind of has tied into kind of COVID and the lack of opportunities and things for them there. So having been in the Motherwell board the other night and obviously hearing Anne-Marie saying there as well, it's positive that these kind of groups and diversionary actions are starting to come back up and running. So by all means, we'll certainly kind of tie in with them and make referrals where we think that can impact it. So kind of going forward for us, that is our kind of priority just now, is kind of targeting these kind of areas where people are congregate, where they are causing the problems. And it actually all kind of partly links into as well kind of alcohol and drug misuse in some of these areas. So as we kind of go forward over the next few months and particularly the summer, that's where we'll be kind of leaning heavily just to kind of get into the groups and to try and give them other opportunities and other ways out. A kind of bigger piece of work round about that going forward as well, and we won't catch them with much of it before they leave the school, is that I've got our Safer Communities coming up with a whole host of kind of inputs and a structure and a schedule to that, which is going to be delivered across certainly the high schools in the area. We're also doing a fair bit of work just now with the primary schools, because we are getting different issues with kids of all ages. And part of what Craig has touched on is obviously the kind of issues of fires, and it's mainly kind of bins and rubbish fire. And we brought it up at the kind of community safety LOIP, and it's on one of the actions there. And Mark's already been kind enough to put us in touch with a charity, and we have a kind of couple of meetings planned later on this month about, again, to be able to get into the schools and deliver an input as to how dangerous the toxins and fumes in these kind of bins and rubbish fires can actually be to them as they stand there, and then actually what they take back home to their families as well. So that's the kind of the bulk of where we'll focus. One of the things certainly we touched on last time as well, though, and will always remain a focus as we go forward for the time being, is the off-road bikes. View Park in particular of late, I know kind of the community officers there, Debbie and Neil, had been out targeting it in a number of weekends. I think one Saturday it was, there was kind of 4 people charged and bike seized and things there. There are another couple of bikers have been trained and kitted out. So again, you'll see the bikes back out and about in your areas, targeting the places where we are having issues with the off-road bikes as well. But that's kind of it for me at the moment, thankfully. It's mainly those low-level things that are just the common denominator across the board.
Thanks, Graham. Bob, you want to come in?
Yeah, Graham, I think you've answered it. I was keen to get any update from you had about the quad bikes off-roads, but you've answered it to a degree, and hopefully we're going in the right direction and we can just get this curtailed a good bit back. Thanks, Graham.
No worries. Thanks. Anybody else? One thing I'd like to ask you about, Graham, is I noticed tonight or earlier on today that these electric scooters are becoming popular, and I actually noticed an adult with a kid on it coming down the main road.
Yeah,
that's very irresponsible.
I know that the electric scooter's a big issue just now, and I see kind of articles appearing everywhere about can you ride them legally, can you not, etc. So I'm not going to give you a definitive answer, but what I will do is I'll go away and I'll consult our road policing department and see what their takes on it are. Because I know that what stems from this as well in other areas as well. We're talking about electric scooters, so what about electric bikes, which are now on the increase? So, but it's all about doing things kind of, I suppose, at least safely, but maybe a couple of people kicking about in one on the main road certainly isn't safe. So,
right. Thanks, Graham. Just when I seen that tonight, I said that somebody's going to get hurted there. Anybody else, anything for Graham? No? Thanks. Next one, fire and rescue. Craig.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, good evening, everyone. So just to probably touch on the back of what some of the comments I made previously as well, something which slipped my mind. So we're looking to start to reinvigorate the fire skills programme as well, which involves kind of juveniles in schools. It was obviously we called a halt to it through COVID, whereby we kind of take the students out and we give them a week's course on fire skills, and we basically give them an insight into what it is like to be a firefighter, and then they see it from the other side of the other aspect of it. and then it perhaps detracts from them wishing to cause these deliberate fires. And it's really, I've submitted a report into the board with a few headline incident types that we've been focusing on within the area, and I'm more than happy to take any questions of it, but I certainly don't intend to go through it line by line and figure by figure, but just to kind of draw your attention to how it's been brought together. So I've compared Q4 over the last 3 years, because incident types are very seasonal. So we tend to have a spike in deliberate secondary fires, i.e. bin fires, in the kind of warmer weather times, and then they tend to reduce through the kind of winter periods. And it's just really an example of the comparisons that we make between the quarters. So we're really comparing like by like when we're talking about the last 3 years in Q4. So the areas that we're covering are accidental dwelling fires, accidental fire casualties, deliberate secondary fires, which are your bin fires, your vandalism, your refuse fires, etc. Fires in non-domestic property, casualties from non-fire emergencies, which are your road traffic accidents, etc., your rescues, and UFAS, which is unwanted fire signals, fire alarm signals, which really kind of causes something. Really, the UFAS and the deliberate secondary fires are our main areas of focus across the area, and it's our main areas that we look to reduce demand upon ourselves from, engaging with the business community to reduce unwanted fire alarm signals, and engaging with schools and households to reduce deliberate secondary fires. Then, if I can draw your attention to community safety engagement overview. So community safety of late, we've started to reinvigorate again our home fire safety visit programme. It's available to everyone, as I'm sure you're all aware. So I'd be keen for you to share it with all your partners, all your delegates, and members of your communities, that service is available for them. They can call that free number. We'll come out and we'll give them some home fire safety advice, and we'll put up some smoke alarms if necessary, free of charge. Another area that I probably want to discuss that's probably relevant to business communities is operational intelligence. So our firefighters will come out and will assess their premises, not in terms of their own fire safety, but in terms of our safety as firefighters entering them, and the risk to the wider community should these premises go on fire and they contain hazmats, etc. Then it's obviously very relevant or very pertinent that we need to know about what's in them, so that it doesn't cause risk to that wider community if there was to be a major incident within them. So that's something we are looking to reinvigorate in the area over the next few months with the relaxation of COVID restrictions. Last two items, firstly being recruitment. So we're looking to raise awareness of the various recruitment opportunities we've got within the organisation, specifically within minority and underrepresented groups. And I've got a list of dates there within the report. So again, I'd urge them to share it with anyone within your communities that may be interested in a career within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. And lastly, probably most importantly, we're looking for engagement from yourselves on the future vision for Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. So we're currently undergoing a public consultation on what direction the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service should take in the future, and what additional roles and responsibilities we could possibly take on. Again, there's links within there in our website, firescotland.gov.uk. There is a presentation from our chief, and there is an open public consultation which was available from the 7th of June, a couple of days past, and it's going to run to the 18th of July. And I'd urge you where possible to engage with your communities to have their say on the future direction of Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. And that's me. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks, Craig, for a comprehensive report. Anybody, any comments or questions for Craig?
Hugh Breen, Chair, can I come in?
Certainly, Hugh.
I've tried to raise my hand. Craig, a couple of questions, and you might not be in a position to answer them, I don't know. But I don't know if I read or heard recently that let's call him your boss, your chief officer, between North and South has been made into one, so one will be in command of both north and south, if I've got the right information. And the other thing is there anything about cutbacks in fire stations as a result of this amalgamation with your chief officers? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much for your question. I can probably shed some light on it. The information you've got is accurate. There is a merger between North and South Lanarkshire ongoing at the moment. There will be no impact on service delivery. So there'll be no closure of stations, there'll be no reduction in personnel. All it is to align it with the NHS health boards, to align it with community planning partnerships, the LRPs, the RRPs. They're all pan-Lanarkshire. So really, it's only about merging our antecedent north and south, separate north and south local senior officer areas together into one, so that we can more better engage with those strategic groups at a Lanarkshire level. And then there's less of a crossover between the two Lanarkshires. There will be no impact to service delivery.
Thanks for that, Craig. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Craig.
No problem.
Bob, you want to come in?
Chair, yeah, it's for Craig. And Craig, there's an item that's come up at this board meeting a few times. It's called the Tannockside Business Park Compass House. You'll be aware of it. Both the fire and the police have been down there. I think as this has been streamed live to the community, and what I would say to the community is that ask your kids, because it seems to be that a number of youths have been caught in the building or trying to get into the building. It's been set on fire a number of times, as you know, Graham, and the council have now cut down the exit stair, the outside stair, to stop youths getting up the top, and they're starting to block all the windows completely. I need to say, if you've got a photo of it, it's like a war zone down at this building. But by doing this, have you seen a decrease in the call-outs, Graham, to the site? And have you any overview about what the site is and what it looks like? Thanks, Chair.
Graham?
I can come in on that, Councillor. So yeah, and as it happens, I was instant commander at the last fire that was down there, and that was over the winter time, when it was quite a serious fire. We did have to commit breathing apparatus within it to contain it. I'm certainly not aware of any instances since then. There may have been minor ones that have went under the radar, but I can certainly look at that statistically over the last 3 months, and I'll get back to you. As I say, I don't have the figures to hand, but I can certainly find them out for you and get back to you if that be of assistance.
Okay.
Chair, that's helpful, but just as I said, with people watching, to maybe just ask your family or whatever, if there's anybody going about there, just stay away from it, because we don't want any seriously things happening to our young folk. Thanks, Chair.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else, any other questions or comments? No, we'll move on to any other business. Anybody want to raise in under any other business?
Can I come in here?
Aye.
Aye, it's Sam. It's just a matter of interest. One of the documents we had for tonight's meeting was guidance on the planning process. And while it's quite a well set out document, we came across one omission that's in it, and there is no way in that document it actually mentions the inclusion of the access panel, which it's meant to, because it was part of the statutory consultation for the Scottish Government last year. The access panel is involved in most kind of checking accessibility issues in most public buildings. So it was just a bit of an omission, I think, but we're waiting to hear back for the, what is it called, the planning and placement manager, whoever that may be, just to see, get some clarification on that.
Okay, so I'm sure the planning officers will take that up. Matt, would you like to come in?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. Absolutely. Sam will take your comments on board. Sam will feed that back to the planning officers who pulled that document together, and we'll ensure that any omissions are rectified, and we'll reissue that.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else? Elizabeth, you want to bring something up?
Yes, sorry. It was just the fact that, just to let you know that Thornywood Community Council were organising a fun day, and North Lanarkshire Council has put out a statement today saying there'll be no outdoor events, large events for adults and children, but obviously they're having the children's summer thing, that I think that's allowed to go ahead, but there's no events allowed for this year, which the Thornywood Council are absolutely devastated, because we've put a lot of time and money and stuff. So, but hopefully next year.
Right, well, I think we have to follow the government rules on for the
Yes,
COVID.
government as well. Sorry, that's what I meant. The Scottish
Right,
government
so
as well. Sorry.
It's the Scottish government that's making the rules that we've got to follow. So hopefully, as you say, later on down the line, we can relax them a wee bit.
Yeah.
Huey, you would like to come in?
Yeah, Chair, it's on that same subject Liz was talking about. They were out a bit of money to the North Lanarkshire Council for, I think it's permission through licence, etc. So there's no problem. That money will be refunded. I think that's straightforward there.
I would think so. If it's cancelled, then it doesn't go ahead. But I need to check with the officers for that one. Anybody know anything about that? No.
Surely it should be. It should be an easy question. If you apply for something and it's cancelled, you get the money back. Surely there's no argument in that, Chair.
I would agree with you there, Huey. I think that's that would probably be the answer. As I say, it's the Scottish government make the rules, so we've just got to
Okay.
follow them.
Thanks, Chair.
Right.
Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else, anything?
Chair, Marcus, just on that point, we can certainly take Hugh's point back and ask the question about any refunds in relation to licences that have been paid for, if there's been any change in the regulations, and we can feed that back to the board.
Okay, Matt, that's fine. Great.
Thanks.
Anybody, anything else?
Jim, can I just come in, please, if that's okay? It's Councillor Mooney. I'm sure Elizabeth will be aware, but I have been going back and forward with one of the officers at the council about this on their behalf. There was quite a lot of questions he asked that they needed answers to, and the officer couldn't answer them all, so he's went to other people to try and get information back to them. So there has been a slight delay. One of their concerns was that we had been assured that this would be openly communicated to the full of North Lanarkshire Council yesterday, and it hadn't happened. However, I have went on to North Lanarkshire Council's Facebook page, and 1 hour ago, I think perhaps in part due to me chasing it, about 5:30 tonight, that they have now put on an official statement for everyone to read with regards to the use of parks and green spaces for events. So apologies to Elizabeth on behalf of the council for that not having been done when it was supposed to be. But I'm devastated as well, because I had a team put in for Elizabeth's event. It's a knockout, and I fully believe that we would have won it. So you can imagine how upset that we are. But I'm sure that next year's event is going to be amazing, Elizabeth, and it just gives them a wee bit more time to prepare as well. But yeah, I hope that North Lanarkshire Council are going to come back with the answers to the questions pretty soon, and especially with regards to their refund. So that is something I've already questioned with the council, just to clarify. Thanks.
Thanks, Nora. Mark Howard, want to come in?
Thanks, Jim. I'm kind of new to this and had some technical issues at the start of this evening, so apologies for that, but I've tried to capture as much of it as possible. But I suppose it's just in terms of a wee update, and Graham McLaughlin has already touched on it. One of the issues that was raised through the local outcome improvement plan for community safety was the setting of fires and bit of wheelie bins, and the solvent abuse that kind of comes from that, that's linked to it, particularly in relation to the green general waste bin. We've engaged with an organisation called Resolve, who are keen to deliver training to the partners just on solvent abuse, not just in relation to bin fires, but across the board. We've actually managed to organise that for Bellshill for the 30th of June. So I'm going to pop my email address in the chat box if anybody wants to take part in that training. if they could contact us and let you know, we'll make sure we get the joining details. It will be done remotely, I believe, via Zoom. In terms of mental health, for the next board meeting, I would hope to kind of circulate a bit of a report for some work that we did during Mental Health Awareness Week with organisations in View Park, the gardens and the allotments. The theme was nature, and again, thankful to those organisations for the opportunity to kind of work in partnership with them. And I'll share the kind of evaluation report for that at the next board meeting. Some of the conversations that have been kind of coming up with our role in kind of terms of community engagement are along the lines of what's happening with Club 365 this year. So I don't know if there's anybody on the call this evening that would be able to give a wee bit of an update in terms of that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Bob. Sorry, Bob.
Chair, yeah, it's a separate matter. Is that okay?
Aye, I think we just with the general discussion, I think.
Yeah, it's just to provide some information to the board. Just very recently and very unfortunately, we had a chap to kill in Market Square and unfortunately died. And it's a sad situation. But what came out of that was about a request to have a defibrillator within the square. And we now understand, with the help of the G71 group, there's going to be one installed. There was one installed for people that would know where the Miners is in View Park and where the Old Club is. There's a kind of a small row of shops here. There was one fitted yesterday, a defibrillator, and there's one in the allotments. It's just to say, Chair, that this is a great way forward for the area, for the community. In the event that something happens, at least we've got a good chance if it's linked to the heart attack situation. So it's great to see that, and hopefully, again, it's about working in partnership, Chair. How many times have we said this tonight? It's something that the council can't do themselves. They need to work in partnership, and that's exactly what's happened here. So well done to the community group. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Bob, for that. I agree wholeheartedly. I think we should, in fact, even campaign to get defibrillators in other areas as well, because they are a great help if anything happens, as you know. Frank, you're wanting to come in?
It was just really to answer Mark's point, if that's all right with yourself, Chair.
Right.
So, I mean, the Club 365, the programme for the summer, it has been finalised at the minute. I mean, you might have seen the announcement around this sort of an ESN offering in a number of hubs for the summer period, which is really welcome. I've got to say the plans are pretty ambitious and really quite exciting, I've got to say, for the summer period. And Marco, you know, has been involved in this before, and you know, as we spoke about previously, you know, that mixed model approach is going to continue, involving sort of third sector groups as well. So the plans have been finalised just now, and that will be articulated through the council's communication platform and to schools imminently, I would suggest. But it certainly is a really exciting programme this year.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thanks, Frank. Anybody else wanting to say and to come in? No? Nobody, any other comments or questions? Right, well, thanks very much for attending. We've had a great meeting tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future. Thanks very much.
Chair, could you just give the date of the next meeting? It's on the agenda.
Oh, sorry, the date of the next meeting is the 6th of September, 6:30 to 8:30. That's the date for the next meeting. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Good night, Paul.
Thanks, Chair.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Right.